Welcome to Cafe CLIL discussion 3, CLIL Content Teacher Training, recorded on the 22nd of February 2009.
Well, I'm a teacher trainee in biology in the center of Germany in Kassel, and my teacher trainees come after university to our institution to run a 2-year training in schools around the city of Kassel. And I'm a biology trainer, and I deal with ICT in our seminar as well.
Sounds interesting.
And as you might know, in Switzerland we have a 2-phase teacher education. We first train them in university for 2 subjects, and after their university degree in 2 subjects and education, they come to our seminars spread over the country, and in each of our Bundesländer we have a different structure of teacher training in this second phase.
So there's a 2-phase system.
Yeah.
Here we've only got a 1-phase system in Switzerland. It's pre-service. What they do is they come from grammar schools, and they are trained on the one hand linguistically, and on the other hand methodology, pedagogics, etc. And primary school teachers are trained in 7 subjects, and secondary school teachers are trained in 4 subjects.
Up to the final exam and the pre-academic level each?
Yes.
Well, in the Netherlands we have the system that for lower secondary and vocational we have the same system as you have, methodology and subject together, but for the higher intellectual levels we have more or less the system as Egbert describes. Now the students go to university and get a degree in chemistry, for instance, and then do an extra course for 1.5 years for methodology and psychology and that sort of things. So, and after that you are a qualified trainer, a qualified teacher.
Yeah, here in Switzerland it largely depends which canton you work for. In central Switzerland it's the system I described. In other cantons it's slightly different, and for upper secondary the Swiss have adopted the same system as you have. You study a subject, and then afterwards you add 2 or 3 semesters of methodology and pedagogics, and then qualify as a teacher.
How much stress is there on practice in your context? Because I know from my own experience in the UK there's a very heavy stress, and in terms of quantity, new teachers spend up to 75% or more of their time in schools from the word go, and they kind of drop out of school for a day or so a week for theory and methodology in a university context, but actually they start in a school from scratch and get the training alongside being in a school.
Keith, could you take your microphone a little bit from your lips?
Okay. I'll move it a little bit further. Is that any better, Egbert?
It's better, thank you.
Better, yeah.
Okay.
And Lida, could you please talk a bit louder?
Okay, I sit closer to the microphone.
Fine.
Is that better?
That's better, much better.
That's Loretta ringing.
We
Oh, Loretta, we have Loretta.
Yes, we are here.
That's great, Loretta. Good to have you.
Nice to meet you again.
Listen, we've just been kind of introducing ourselves, and we did start talking a little bit about training, but we have Lida Stern with us, who's a chemist from Holland, and we have Egbert Weisheit, who's a biology and chemistry teacher from Germany, and you know Peach. I don't know, have you ever met Lida and Egbert before, Loretta?
No, I've never met him.
Maybe you could say a quick word about yourself, so that Lida and Egbert get an idea who you are, and I'll keep looking for Bernd to see if Bernd appears.
Okay. I'm Lauretta from Milan, Italy, and I'm teacher's trainer, and I'm German teacher. So I'm not an English teacher. And I'm teacher training as far as CLIL is concerned, and as far as European dimension and development of European projects is concerned.
Loretta, is your CLIL English, Italian, or German Italian?
German.
Okay.
That's very interesting. We started talking a little bit about pre-service training, and Peach and Egbert and Lida said a little bit about their context for pre-service teacher training and qualification. And what's the situation where you are, Lauretta? What sort of mix of methodology and practice do teachers get in pre-service training?
Yes, so pre-service training is is normally carried out by university, and they prepare teacher mainly as far as content is concerned. Then teachers have the possibility to attend a post-degree course preparing for teaching at secondary school level. Primary school level has a different pre-service preparation, in the sense that they have to do a traineeship, and that their university degrees lasts 1 year less than the degree necessary to be teacher at secondary school level.
Yeah.
So this is what happens in Italy. In-service training is generally carried out by local authority, regional authority for school development, but of course there are different actors, such as university, of course, but also professional association, and so different kind of actors are allowed to deliver in-service training. Of course, also Goethe Institute for German teachers, or British Council, or this kind of institutes representing European countries.
Yeah. What's the situation in your other countries, in Holland, Germany and Switzerland? Does it tend to be local authorities which organise in-service training, as Lauretta's described in Italy?
Well, in Germany we have the situation that the CLIL is not really an accepted area, because there is a strong interest of second language teacher to incorporate things like CLIL into their domain. So for me, as a science teacher without a certificate in language, it is impossible to really teach officially in the CLIL structure, in a, let's say, in a branch that combines science and language. And I can just teach small bits in my German focused lessons in biology and chemistry, using the language as a working language.
Yeah.
And this situation that science teachers and other content teachers are not really accepted working in a foreign language is one of the most severe problems in German teacher training.
In Switzerland here, it depends again, it depends which canton you work for, but in most cantons what happens is that most teachers of a subject also teach a foreign language. That is at primary. About 50% of teachers at lower secondary teach a foreign language and other subjects. So Although CLIL is not sort of an official approach at lower secondary, teachers are encouraged, if they can, they should try and combine topics from subjects which they teach, that they should teach them in either French or in English. Primary, because the teachers are, or the practicing teachers, they cover most of the other subjects. It's quite easy for them to teach bits and pieces from other subjects in English, be it PE, be it arts and crafts, or a science topic or so. Yeah. So that's the situation here. Keith, you asked about the percentage of working in schools.
Yeah.
Our students, our pre-service students, they go into schools right from day one onwards, but not nearly as much as teachers in the UK. In the first year of their training, they spend half a day in schools. In the second, third and fourth year of their training, they go out on teaching practice between 3 and 5 weeks, and they do that, as far as I know, 4 times, and that's all the contact they have with kids at school.
What's the situation in Holland, Leader?
Oh, well, let me comment on each last issue first. It's different again because we have our 2 systems of in-service training, you know. And let me start with the university level. This year and a half is about a couple of months they start with, you know, it's just lectures and the theory, and then they go to a school as a LEO, and LEO means a teacher still in training.
Okay.
They get a class of themselves, and they get a little bit of payment, and with a tutor from the school and from the university who trains them. So, and this lasts about, I think, 7 or 8 months. And after that, you know, they go back a little bit to the university and, you know, get their qualification. And on the other hand, what Peach said was that our pre-service training for primary and lower secondary is the same as Peach described. They start with 1 morning a week. In the first year, and up till, you know, quite a long period of teaching practice in their last year. So that's one thing. And maybe I should comment on the CLIL situation in the Netherlands as well. I don't think there are formal requirements for schools that offer bilingual education. We have 2 universities trying to help, as Nijmegen and Utrecht. Nijmegen is the oldest, and I think they started first. Utrecht is, you know, trying to pace up at the moment. And they try to help the schools, about 100 schools we have now, as much as they can. And they get a lot of support from our European platform with, I think, money and training and that sort of thing. But still, I don't think there are formal requirements. And that's also because the students have to pass their final exam in Dutch. So,
I think in Holland it's a kind of an informal recognition, isn't it? That I know Nijmegen does do school visits with a view to giving them a kind of certification of some kind for teaching bilingually, but it's not really a governmental thing, I think, is it, Leader?
No, and this is all in service, of course. And we don't have at all a pre-service training for CLIL teachers. I mean, me myself, I just started, you know, talking English to students, and that was it.
I've just come from one place where they now have CLIL in the state school system in very large numbers, and that's in Asturias in northern Spain, and they have a law which bans schools from selecting its students. So that combination, widespread CLIL and very diverse levels in the classrooms because of the legislation, means that the teachers having to cope with lots of diversity, not just in the children, but in methodologically, in materials provision, and all sorts of other aspects. And even there, I don't think they have within pre-service training specifically anything that feeds that reality in schools in the state system. I wonder if you've come across training programs that do something about CLIL for teachers before they actually get into schools, in your experience. Have you got experiences of that?
Are you asking
yes.
me?
I think everybody really, because
No. My answer is short, no.
Yeah.
We do here in the canton of Lucerne. We do include CLIL in the pre-service training, and we've got a system where after 2 years, the primary trainees choose 4 subjects with special focus, which means they in their third and last year of training, they get an extra 2 modules. And one of those modules is a complete CLIL module with 12 sessions, 12 90-minute sessions during, that will be term 5, I think. Yeah, semester 5.
And anything in secondary, Pete?
Well,
Pardon?
Anything in secondary in Lucerne, Pete?
The same applies to secondary,
Okay.
but there it's not in the 3rd year, it's in the 4th year. It's always in the last year where they get one module, 1 semester, 12 sessions, 12 90-minute sessions on CLIL. Secondary as well.
Sorry, Egbert, I interrupted you. You were going to say something.
Well, the situation in Germany is very strange because schools have started using CLIL to promote their vision of school in the region. On the other hand, we have a great lack of teachers with a certificate to teach language and subject in one person. So in higher secondary, in our grammar school type, it depends on the headmaster and the language department if they accept somebody teaching subjects to teach them with English as a working language. On the other hand, in secondary 1 schools, they are in a way more liberal and accept if somebody gives this as an additional teaching activity.
Yeah.
And so we have 2 phases of teacher education. The first is in Germany rather academic based. So you are taught in university biology and not teaching biology.
Yeah.
And at the end, in the second phase, you start to learn about teaching. And this structure makes it rather difficult to bring language and subjects in Germany at the university together. And there's one activity in Frankfurt University to have a CLIL course as an in-service course with a certificate afterwards. But it's the first of these courses I've learned that we have in Germany. So we need CLIL teaching, but we do not educate teachers in CLIL.
It's very strange, isn't it, that should be the case? And can I ask Loretta to contribute as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think the situation is very similar to the one that was explained now. That is to say, language teachers are prepared to develop CLIL modules. So even in preparatory school. We have also a master, I think, that is carried out by the University of Venice. So that is a postgraduate school for CLIL teacher. But within the schools, teachers clearly is a part of the individual experience of a teacher, and it is very different in the various Italian regions. As Keith knows, here in Lombardy we have run various in-service training for subject teachers and both subjects and language teacher together in order to motivate the content teacher to run CLIL lesson. And it was better, it was more a methodology course with workshop. That is to say, the content teacher developed modules together with the language teacher. So it was based on workshop. But officially, there is a law that has been passed that in the within 2 years at a level of upper secondary school, all students will be confronted with or will have to study a subject in a foreign language. But how and when this law will become a practice, I'm not sure. I don't know.
It's fantastic to know that that's going to happen, but I imagine a lot of teachers are shaking in their boots thinking about it.
Yes, yes, I'm sure.
I'm aware that we've talked in a way quite generally about training, and we've touched on training and its relationship with CLIL. Perhaps I can ask you a couple of sort of guiding questions or suggestions the way we might go for, say, the next 20 minutes or so, and that is, if there is little or no provision for pre-service CLIL teacher training, is there anything we can do about it, and what is that? That's my first idea, because Pete has said that there is a provision for pre-service training in Lucerne, and maybe we could find out how that came about and why it's not happening in other places. And my other suggestion is, if you'd rather, or maybe we could talk about both of them, and that is what goes into this training, ideally, what is the content that we think should be in these programs, and what do you think? We could follow either of those two threads, I think, quite usefully.
Yes, I think it would be very interesting to...
Any preferences?
From the view of assigned teachers who didn't study language in his university phase, my interest is to have a training on communication skills with science topics, and to enable teachers and students afterwards to use the language they've got from school. All of our students have had 6 to 9 years English as a second language in gymnasium, means grammar school. But most of them are not able to use the language in a communication context.
Yeah.
But they all have to read English text in their studies. So there's a great need to encourage them to grab into the box and find what they have learned in school, to use it in a new situation.
And I think you can tell, colleagues, what Egbert's saying is, I think he'd like to talk about the content of training for teachers. What do the rest of you think? Because we could guide our discussion that way if you're all in favour of that.
Yes, I think it's okay for me. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, what I can do is I can sort of talk about why we do provide for CLIL training in pre-service training. That is explained fairly quickly. The way that teachers and the institution where teachers are trained in the canton of Lucerne and in the whole of central Switzerland has changed. There was a new institution set up, I think now 6 years ago, and English had never been a subject at primary. And when this new institution was set up, we were asked to come up with a training program for teaching English. And that meant that we were able to include ideas on CLIL, and that's why we decided to offer a CLIL, a compulsory CLIL module, but it's in the training of the teaching of English as a foreign language, and not training subject teachers to teach their subjects through English. That only happens at upper secondary level.
So you were part of a kind of a think tank making decisions and suggestions then, Pete?
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's the key, isn't it, really? Getting the ear of the right people at the right time to talk to them. Because my colleagues in Asturias said there's a will in university faculties that prepare subject teachers, but they haven't found the way. You know, there's interest. My colleague in Ministry of Education and Local Authority organises in-service training. She's got links with the university, and they're interested in CLIL, but they're not sure how to go about it yet. And I think Pete is just saying that in your context, Pete, you're from a language background, you were in a position to influence, I suppose, that policy, weren't you?
Well, I guess I wasn't able to do that because I came from a language background, but simply I was sort of lucky in the sense that they needed someone to come up with a training program for a new subject, which English then was, and I was able to introduce these new ideas in the way that I thought they would be most appropriate in the Central Swiss context, and it worked. I don't know, probably I think it's more difficult trying to include new ideas in a system which has been running for years or for decades. I think bringing about change in that context is more difficult.
I think, if I can intervene, I think that the focus, from my point of view, should be more on strategies. Because if you are a content teacher, you are supposed to know, to master the content of your subject. And but what subject teachers normally lack is the use of strategies that the language teacher normally masters. And the problem is how to match these two different approach to teaching. For example, scaffolding techniques are normally familiar to language teacher because students are hesitates when they have to speak. They have more problem in communicating than the ones they have when they speak in the mother tongues. So, for example, scaffolding techniques, from my point of view, should be really an important part of the training. And then, of course, also the function of questioning, not only in a very simple way, but questioning what we call higher order questioning. Questioning in when you have to reach a higher cognitive level of learning. And I think these two focuses are very important. And
go ahead.
Yeah, and interaction, of course. All the interaction experiences, analysis that a language teacher normally have to learn, have to master when they go into a classroom, are normally not so familiar to, at least in Italy, to content teachers.
Listen, I'm going to write these down, but the four of you, please do just shout out ideas that come to you in the same way Loretta's done, and I'll make a note of them and tidy it up in a kind of a bullet point list so that it's available to us all afterwards. So, anything else, or who'd like to go next?
I would like... Okay, go on, Pete.
Lida, go on.
Okay. I would like to stress on the fact that what Loretta says makes sense to me. That language teachers have many more skills in interaction, in scaffolding, in group work, and that sort of thing. But I realized when I was first teaching chemistry that you need exactly the same in your own language, because the chemistry language is a complete second language for students when they start. So you have to build up the same system and be interactive and do group work with them to reach your aims. And for me, it wasn't all that difficult to transfer this to English, because as a good teacher, I think that you are aware of all these things, and you only need a little bit of training maybe to pick up better and more ideas from your language colleagues. So.
Well, it's fantastic to hear that 4 people from 4 countries, some of them have never met and are only connected through Keith, think and report about this problem in the same way as we in Germany find these problems as well. And I agree, Loretta and Lida, this should be done, but there is a gap between teachers teaching languages and science topics in Germany, a very deep and wide gap, because we are sorting students as a linguistic language student on the one hand and a science student on the other hand, and in school, and we do not see and do not promote that language activities have to be connected to a subject and not to language itself. And there's a lot of teaching German language in Germany based just on literature or on politics, because these are the second subject of the teachers. And only if you have a teacher with a second subject in the sciences or in sports or in music, you can a little bit you can make this gap a little bit closer, so that you try to use techniques of your second subject, and this and there's a lack of interest in things like scaffolding, questioning, interaction, and group work in science lessons.
Yeah. In a way, I mean, I just want to chip in that it's quite predictable, isn't it, that we would all agree with each other, because in a way that's why we're here. And we're like-minded, we have similar backgrounds, even though Egbert and Lida come from science subject areas and the rest of us are from languages. We're all CLIL-minded people, I think. And we're actually a positive side of the tip of the iceberg, because the rest of the institutions we work with and systems we work with don't have conversations like this, and probably don't agree with everything we're trying to say here.
Yeah, I think you're quite right, Keith. Maybe one solution is to start with CLIL as early as possible, in other words, at primary level. I think what Egbert said was applies to the situation here in Switzerland as well. The higher up in the school hierarchy you get, the bigger the gap between the science teachers on the one hand and the language teachers on the other hand. And science teachers very often think, well, their language competence is not high enough to teach their subject through English, and the language teachers fear that their knowledge of the subject is not good enough or not detailed enough. Whereas at primary level, of course, you tend to get all-round teachers who teach languages and subjects. And if there's a sort of a common culture established at primary where teachers teach subjects through a foreign language, and later on lower secondary school teachers know that has been going on for quite some time at primary level. Sooner or later there will be a change of culture at lower secondary as well. So hopefully that might, or I hope that might be a contribution towards the spread of CLIL.
So in a way, if I may paraphrase, but it would be leading them by force of good example. That's what you're saying, isn't it, Pete?
I think so, yes, yeah. And pupils will sort of transfer to lower secondary and maybe put a little bit of pressure on teachers at lower secondary to abandon the sort of artificial topics found in English language teaching course books and bring in so-called real, between inverted commas, real topics from other subjects.
Yeah.
Well, the second thing is, in Germany, if we talk about the bilingual or CLIL teaching, there is a lot of headmasters and people in higher staff position that say, well, if we use English as a language in school, it should be real English, good English. So my school says we would like to have a partner school in Britain. Probably in Ireland, but not from the Eastern
real English.
Real English. Probably from America, or from Australia, or from New Zealand, but not from India, probably, or from the Africa. So there is a special view of English as the perfect language from the very British type, and not English as a communication language as the so-called lingua franca over the world. So to bring in one's own country somebody teaching a subject in English, even if he is not a native speaker in English. So if Loretta could come to Germany and talk about some scientific or theater or other subject in English as an Italian person, to show that English as a second language is worth listening and talking.
Yeah. Can I throw in another question? Because I'm aware that it's already 22, looking at my clock, and the discussion we're having is really great, because I don't know if any of you will be at the IATEFL conference in Cardiff in April. But they're going to resurrect the CLIL debate that they had there a few years ago in Cardiff again, which was run by The Guardian and I think the British Council and I think Macmillan. And Macmillan are going to resurrect this debate, and their debate question this time is, CLIL, is it compromising or complementing language education, English language education? And I think we would all agree about that, but I just wanted to throw that in there, complementing or compromising language teaching, because I've heard Egbert say in the past, for example, and I'm sure he won't mind me repeating it, that he feels that in some cases his students get more communication development in science lessons in English than they do in their traditional English lessons. So in a way, CLIL is compromising language teaching, but for a positive reason in Germany, and I wondered what you thought about that debate question.
Well, I think that CLIL is only compromising the teaching of English if English as a foreign language, the subject EFL, is sort of very much focused on form. In other words, formal grammar teaching, learning lists of vocabulary, etc. If EFL consists mainly of developing communication skills, you can do that just as well with CLIL, and then it will be certainly complementing and not compromising EFL.
That's very well said, Pete. Any other comments?
Yeah, I would like to raise a complete other issue in this aspect, is that I have a feeling in the Netherlands that most of the bilingual schools start for only the very intellectual children, to give them an extra chance to go higher up in the hierarchy for finding jobs and universities later. And so I don't think the issue is there so much in the Netherlands about compromising or complementing. There's just mainly other reasons why parents send their children to these schools. And another thing is that in these schools there are no black children, no immigrant children. And that's another big issue in the Netherlands. You can't say it loudly, but it is.
So in a way, you're. Let me rephrase that, Lida, because it's a very good point, isn't it? That in some contexts, CLIL is very selective and possibly elitist.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, in Italy it's very different because I would say it is more complementing than compromising, because actually it was really thought to give the student a chance more, an opportunity more to reinforce language learning. And of course, now we have a problem we are now discussing together with Gisela Lange, who is our inspector for CLIL, that all schools do CLIL, and there is a kind of wild use of the CLIL methodology, and we are now trying to define better what CLIL is really, because if you are a language teacher like myself and I teach German history, I'm not a CLIL teacher, or am I a CLIL teacher? According our approach, I'm not a CLIL teacher, but according to many also some academic environment, I could be a CLIL teacher. So, and we are trying to define better, what CLIL should be, and if it is not so, it is not CLIL. And we have developed also some indicators. We are working on indicators to help school also to identify if their teachers are doing actually CLIL or not.
Yeah, I in my visit recently to Spain, I thought I'd been having for quite a long time really materialised itself. Not necessarily because of people I met in Spain, but it was just a forum for me to express this idea more clearly. And I think at the heart of CLIL training for teachers is to be able to equip them with skills to be aware of language within their subject. And by awareness I mean to know what language is important in their subject, for learners to be able to talk about their subject and write about their subject, and to process reading in their subject and listening in their subject. And that's a very long way of saying teachers need to be aware of their language. And the other dimension to that is, the second thing is to know what to do with it once they are aware of it. But for me, those are two pillars for CLIL which are at the heart. All the rest of it is, I think, something that Lida has touched on, common sense and good practice. But I think those two things, being aware of language and how you deal with it in tasks, those are central CLIL pillars for me, for training teachers.
I totally agree with you, Keith.
Yes.
That applies to the teaching of the subject through L1, just as it does in a CLIL setting, teaching the subject through L2. And I think in that respect, it shouldn't be too difficult sensitizing subject teachers to issues of language, be it L1 or L2. If they do it for both, it means that they have sort of made the first step towards teaching their subject in the foreign language.
Yeah. But do you think it's happening in both, Pete? Because I know in the UK, for example, there are moves about to get teachers to embrace language more throughout the curriculum. So they have it in their policies for education in schools that teachers think about language and support that language within their subjects in the first language. Although I think that's probably because of the large population of migrant kids in the UK and weaker learners as well. But I wonder if that's happening in other countries as well, that the L1 policy may drive CLIL policy generally.
If I may answer, yes, it's happening here in Switzerland. I think it was triggered by the PISA results in 2002, which showed that in a Swiss context, pupils were not performing as well as people had thought they or had hoped they would be. And one of the reasons for the negative results which were identified was that we've got this dual system where the official language of education in the German-speaking part should be standard German, and a lot of teaching at primary and lower secondary has been done in Swiss German dialect. And as a result, there has been quite a considerable drive during the last couple of years to make teachers aware of the fact that they should teach in standard German and that they should keep an eye on their language competence in standard German as well.
That's very interesting, isn't it?
It's still going on.
It's very, very interesting that that's the case. You know, that in a way, it's very similar. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar to contexts in many diverse places, such as Wales, such as northern Spain in the Basque Country, and for very different political reasons as well. But actually, making teachers think about language and what they do with it is happening in a lot of places, isn't it? Listen, we've explored an area of this question, training for teachers, which has brought us slightly out of our CLIL realm. It's very interesting, but I wondered if I could throw another guiding question to you, just maybe for the last 10 minutes or so. For me, I keep saying this, you know, how can you train teachers to become aware of language in their subjects? And what I do, and I try very hard to do, is to keep it very simple, get them to look at the language through texts in their textbooks and language in their curriculum documents and language that comes out of their mouths while they're teaching, and then get them to look at how they can create their tasks again, bearing in mind that language, so that they provide the learners the language to answer their questions, or they provide the learners the language in a handout to enable them to carry out a PowerPoint presentation. Maybe the language is annotated on a handout with slides, that kind of thing. It would be interesting to hear what ideas you've got in that direction, because we start to talk about a program for training for teachers that delivers that language awareness and task design in concrete terms, doesn't it? Real examples for what happens in the training classroom. Any other ideas about that?
Well, as a science teacher, normally I'd say to show teachers and students best practice, and to show them that it's necessary to use English as a communication language. First, if you deal with a special subject, the students go to the internet, make research, and there is a lot of material for biology. There's a lot of YouTube things on biology and chemistry. So to give them this new type of information sources, and to help them to integrate it in the normal curriculum. This is one hand, and the other hand is having a situation to send information abroad, as we do it in the Science Across things, and to receive things from abroad, and to find that people in Bulgaria or in Italy have done it very well in the foreign language, and that this best practice activities could stimulate students to accept English language as a working language in science.
Yeah. Let me rephrase that, Egbert, because I'm writing this down as we say these things. Teachers need examples that show how English is necessary for their subject, such as using the internet. And the second thing is school links through the medium of English are a great motivation for learners as well. Those two things, I think.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I would like to comment on using the internet. Even if I teach in Dutch, I mean, the internet is used by students for just copy and paste. And to avoid that, I mean, you have to guide them through, and you have to make them aware of, to find more sources and that sort of things. But again, that's not different in your native language than in English. So I can provide them with a list or all sorts of guiding questions in English as well. And we usually do, because nearly everything you can find on the internet is in English. So it's another way of, for me, not an actually big difference between teaching in your native language and teaching in English.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other ideas, examples like that for, you know, the kind of thing that you would say is essential for the training program?
Yes, please go on.
Go on, Lida.
No, I was just also emphasizing the use of international exchange programs like Science Across the World, and now this wonderful European program, the e-twinning. And well, Science Across the World still has a lot of advantages because they provide teachers with resources as well, and in different languages. So that's a wonderful way of making students aware of using languages. And in different evaluations, we noticed that, and even with teachers, in service training with teachers, that they mention in their evaluation that now they really realize that they have to improve their English. So
yeah. It's interesting, teaching, Loretta, isn't it, that the stress on school links for communication comes from our subject colleagues, don't you think?
Yes. You know, we did this experience with learning Italian in Sweden, and with and we connected Italian classes students with Swedish students learning Italian, and actually the Italian students were the CLIL teachers for the Swedish students, and together with their history teachers, they did an experience of peer learning. And it was really especially for both groups of students, but especially for the Swedish student learning Italian, it was really very motivating. I mean, and connecting students, connecting classes is very important for them, of course, for every one of us. We are now experiencing in this moment presently how important meeting people, even virtually, is for our profession. But it is really motivating, and students could use also Skype or Web2 tools really to experience this kind of things.
Well, I put that in my list, and we've got a few minutes before it reaches 3 o'clock here, 2 o'clock your time. I just wanted to mention that in the UK, I've got a couple of books I bought recently from EAL practice in the UK, which one of the things they stress for teachers is to look at their curriculum documents from the point of view of what the language needs are of the learners. And you know what they say, simply and clearly, is teachers need to add to their curriculum documents another column which highlights the functions that appear in specific tasks. And by functions for science, that may be, let's say, attributing and naming parts of animals and plants. Attributing and naming, we know what the language will be to be able to attribute and name parts of animals and plants. And so in the EAL teacher training context, a specific task to get teachers to do is to make that extra column, because it's not always there. They have to highlight what the functions are. And I would say go even a step further, add another column and give examples of structures that represent those functions, so that the teachers know what kind of language they need to hand to the learners to be able to meet the demands of the content curriculum. I think that would be a key task in a CLIL classroom for teachers in a training program. Get your curriculum document out. Does it have the functions highlighted? If not, talk with each other, find them, and if you can, go a step further and give examples of the phrases that are needed to express that function in the classroom, in the subject.
I think that's a very good idea, and we are trying, on our program, we are trying to do something similar. We are trying to show our pre-service students how they can look at tasks and analyse them in terms of what kind of language do they expect the pupils to need and to use in order to complete the task. And the second thing is to look at all the language which they're confronted with as input, be it spoken or written text, and analyse these texts in terms of what language demands do they pose to the pupils. What we're also trying to do, and that might be the last thing I'm going to say, is that our students are sent out to a bilingual school which operates on a weekly basis, 1 week in German, 1 week in English, and then back to German. And they teach the whole curriculum, all the subjects in that way. So there's no sort of teaching of English as a foreign language. All the other subjects are taught in English and then afterwards in German. And the experiences that our students make at that school is phenomenal, because they can see CLIL in operation.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
I would only make one last comment, because I really have to go.
Sure.
I think that between language and science, for instance, or between language and subject, it is the perfect marriage, because the language provides us with communication and the science provides us with content. And well, why we don't do more together, I never understand. I think
Lida's hit the nail on the head, haven't she, really? It's a lovely thought to tie up our discussion with. It is a good marriage, and I am convinced of that as a linguist. Loretta, any final thoughts?
I just open my door and come back.
Go ahead, Lida.
Yes, maybe. Yes, of course, I agree with all what you have said. I would suggest to subject teachers also to have a look to the European portfolio for student teachers of languages, because it really contains a lot of ideas about what you should know to teach a language, not in the form of language knowledge, but in the form of skills that you should develop. And I find that it is very useful for content teacher, because it gives a lot of inputs to reflect on your way of speaking, of interacting. And even if you are not a language teacher, of course, a teacher can understand without any problem what is meant in the document.
That's a really good. It's a really good suggestion, Loretta. That in a way the European portfolio could be a starting point, couldn't it, for discussion between the language department and the science department or other subject department.
Yeah.